It is the final day of World Space Week. It was established by the UN more than 20 years ago in 1999 to recognize the first human-made object in orbit, which we all know as Sputnik. This year's week focused on the role of private entrepreneurs in the space industry and the positive impact that they are having. NASA's next mission is destined for one of the largest asteroids in the solar system. The Psyche aircraft will be launched on Thursday. It's a first mission designed to study a metal-rich asteroid up close. The scientists hope to learn more about how the Earth and other rocky planets are formed. The asteroid is located between Mars and Jupiter, some 3.5 billion kilometers away. The spacecraft, though, is going to take some time to get there. It will arrive in the year 2029. Meanwhile, the China National Space Administration wants to work with other countries in lunar exploration. It's offering them aid and international organizations the opportunity to collaborate on the Chang'e's 8-moon mission, which is planned to launch in the year 2028. The mission is the fourth stage of the lunar probe, and it will be carried out different types of experiments and research. The deadline to submit proposals for international cooperation is New Year's Eve. I assume this New Year's Eve. And now to get the latest on what's happening in the world of space, we're joined by Keith Cowing, the former rocket scientist, astrobiologist, and editor of NASAWatch.com. We joke about rocket scientists, but we really have a rocket scientist. And you know, one of the themes about this year is the role of private entrepreneurship. And you look at what Musk has done with SpaceX, you look at what Bezos has done, and a number of other, I guess, not very wealthy, apparently, people who have extra money to do all this. How has that filled the gap in what we usually expect the government to do?
Well, it's done two things. First of all, it's made it a lot cheaper to do things. But second, it's not just Bezos and Musk or the rich guys. A company in Spain just put something up. It's smaller companies that are launching out in New Zealand. China has a bunch of companies that are doing things, and so on and so on and so on. So once you start going outside of the government telling someone how to build a rocket, as opposed to the people who kind of know how to do it to say, I know how to do it cheaper. When you start moving it to the people who could do it for cheaper, you open up more options to do more things. That's what's really going on right now. The government's saying, you know what? You know how to do it better than we do.
The skeptic in me, to be frank, is we explored space already, and when I say we, I mean the Americans and several other countries. And so that's fine. If you guys want to go in space, everybody can go. But I feel like there's a military aspect to this whole thing of being in space. Yes, you can get internet, but we can't ignore the fact that there is a technological advantage.
Well, you know, the militarization of space, this is discussed by people. My father was nearly killed by a V-2 in London in 1945, and that rocket fell from space. So the space program has always had a military component. The first people and satellites that went into space were on rockets that originally were designed to have nuclear bombs. Then we said we could do more interesting things with that, and we got the rockets that we have today. All countries that have a large aerospace industry, it's kind of dual use. It doesn't matter if it's the United States, Europe, China, Japan, wherever, where they build military stuff and then build civilian stuff. Hopefully, and then we found that when you do the space stuff, everybody wants to work together or compete in a collaborative fashion. And so, again, there's a duality of this, but there's a lot more of it drifting to the more exciting stuff of building and exploring than just sort of scaring each other.
Yeah, you know, we also have tourism as well. I think Richard Branson was working on this and flying our friends and family up to space and coming back down. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening in the space. Who or which group are you most excited about when it comes to development?
It depends what the topic is. And, you know, when I was growing up in the 60s, there was this song, Everyone's Gone to the Moon, and it was just before the moon landings. And now it looks like everybody is going to the moon. And there's a lot of commercial things. As a matter of fact, New Space Global is going to have a report out, I think, tomorrow that talks about how you use the moon in a commercial fashion. And if you look at who's going back, it's not just the U.S. and, you know, and Russia. It's the U.S. and Russia and China, India and China and all kinds of things. And the thought is to go back to pick up where we left off half a century ago, but to do it differently, not just to go back and pick up a couple of rocks, but say, hey, what can we do with this while we're here? And it's this sort of half a century of thinking about what we can do that you're now seeing being played out by a whole plethora of people and companies.
Blue Origin, SpaceX often talk about this low orbit satellites they launch into space, and I guess I'm referring to giving the world internet. Is this going to be profitable, and is this a worthy idea to invest in?
I believe it is, and I actually spent about a month and a half in Nepal a few years back and had a discussion with some friends of mine there who the first thing that they did was to get a computer for their kids, but they'd have to walk 10 miles to get an internet connection. And the moment that you start putting kids in front of the world of education that's writ large, the parents, that's what they live for. And I think having the ability for everybody everywhere to share in everything that everybody does has to be healthy, especially when we're in times where people are not necessarily agreeing with each other. The more information you could share, the more we understand each other, the more we can get along, and the more we can explore outer space.
Who owns the space? I've always wondered this. Like it's obviously big, it's vast, and we can argue about the moon, but you can argue about low orbit. Eventually, things are going to collide with each other, and there's going to be fingers being pointed. Who's managing the space?
Yeah, that's the thing. Back in the day, there'd be a couple things, and you'd say, "Oh, there's the satellite, or there's another one." But now there's thousands of them, and with these constellations, there will be many tens of thousands. And already there's been traffic issues where they have to move the satellites so they don't bump into each other. Some have collided, and every time one of these things breaks apart, these little pieces go floating around, and depending on where you are, they can be very deadly. And so they've got space debris, and it's sort of like, I don't know, thinking ecologically about what's going on up there. Now that there's so many people up there, you don't necessarily want to be throwing your cigarette butts in somebody else's dessert. So, I mean, this is sort of a healthy realization of things. But at some point, there's got to be some traffic cops. And we have it in the oceans right now. We have it in Antarctica. And I think it's natural that we'll figure out how to do it up in space.
I remember as a child in class watching the space shuttle and inherently one of the explosions, but still I was in awe with what we were able to do as humans. And today we don't really do that. We do it differently now. What's the role of NASA going to be over the next 10 years? And is it just going to be a privatized industry, or does NASA still have a significant role in terms of managing humans going into space?
NASA used to be, like most government space agencies, pushing the boundaries of doing things nobody's done before, to sound a little bit like Star Trek. And then they got into the operational thing. And that's sort of where the space shuttle got expensive in the space station. And hopefully what will happen is, you don't buy your airplane, use it once and throw it away. You get on up, you buy a seat. You free the government from having to do the drone, the drudgery of operating things, to do the exciting stuff. And what happens is, again, you asked about private sector before. The private sector can come in and do the routine stuff cheaply, and they can make a profit. That frees up the government budgets, regardless of what country we're talking about, to do the exciting stuff. And I have to add, people say, well, why are we going to go back to the moon? Well, why was China so excited about its first human in space? Why is India, they can't wait to get their person up there? I always ask, what are these countries discovering that we here in the West are sort of bored with? And if that's the case, that just two countries could be this excited, there's billions of other people that have not had the chance yet to explore and participate in this. So, anything that can free up the ability to inspire and involve more people is a good thing, in my opinion.
Keith, you read my mind. I appreciate what you've taught us over the last few minutes. Certainly a topic we don't normally tackle, but very interesting nonetheless. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.